Morning, everyone. Let's wait for a few more minutes to kick off these sessions and allow some time to join other people's. We'll start this webinar in next 1 minute. Okay, let's start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Bitdefender GravityZone CSPM+, Closing the Gaps Left in Cloud Share Responsibility Model. I am Arjun Patel, Bitdefender Product Manager at Blue Chip Infotech. And joining me today is Yasir Funtes, Solution Architecture from Bitdefender. Before we kick in, a quick housekeeping note. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of presentation. So feel free to type your question into chat box throughout the presentation. We will get to as many as possible. With that said, let me hand over to session to Yasir. Yasir?
Yep, thank you, Arjun. So Yasser Fuentes here. As Arjun said, I'm a Principal Solutions Architect for Bitdefender. I work directly with cloud security solutions as well as MDR. So for the sake of keeping the session in focus, I'm going to turn off my camera because I have multiple screens here, and we'll get the presentation started. Just 1 second. Okay, so Arjun, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Excellent. Okay, so let's begin with why CSPM. So basically, let's do a quick refresh on the need for such security solutions in the cloud infrastructure. So as you might be aware of, the myth of, cloud is someone else's computer is not necessarily the main problem that organizations face today when it comes to cloud infrastructure. Because besides complexity, the truth is that there are many gray spots within that shared responsibility model that as soon as you transition into a CSP, they make you aware of. And many cloud customers seem to overlook these problems. And that is basically what is it that they are responsible for as a service provider versus what is your responsibility. Overlooking mainly that the data and your data and your customers' data is your main responsibility as a cloud customer. And of course, this not only reduces the overall visibility, but also increases complexity while leaving some boundaries on the attack surface in the unknown. As a result, you can see on the screen some statistics from, for example, Verizon DBIR, stating that more than 82% of data breaches involve data that was stored in the cloud. From analyst perspective as well, and this is mainly from market researchers and analysts, they state that nearly all successful attacks in the cloud services are the result of customers' misconfigurations, mismanagement, and of course, mistakes. And this is not to be ended here. You would see more and more as we evolve into this data transformation and cloud adoption era. And of course, if we look at IAM, or Identity Access Management in the cloud, it's even more complex because now we're talking about identities with over 40,000 different permissions or entitlements across many cloud service providers. Now, what is CSPM? Probably, you're familiar with this type of solution, but I would like to refresh a little bit on the concept. So conceptually, and according to Gartner, Cloud Security Posture Management, or CSPM, consists on offering that continuously, or security offering that continuously manages infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, security posture through prevention, detection, and response to cloud infrastructure risks. So that's basically their concept. Our concept, or from our perspective, CSPM is a cloud native security solution that encompasses both prevention, detection, and response capabilities. These type of solutions are aiming to support organizations to securely operate in the cloud while ensuring adherence and compliance with regulatory frameworks, standards, and best practices. CSPM Plus also ensures continuous visibility and remediation of misconfigurations, as well as monitoring how cloud identities are entitled to access cloud resources. In addition to that, it also leverages what we know as cloud detection or cloud threat detection and response via our XDR cloud sensors, which basically provides coverage across multiple cloud service providers or CSPs. Now, I wanted to mention that although not purposely built for governance, risk, and compliance, or as GRC type of solutions, we can state that CSPM, or CSPM Plus in this case, ensures applicability to all three areas. For example, if we're talking about compliance, we can see that we provide you with full visibility over cloud resources, identities, and entitlement. If we're talking about risk, the main idea is to continuously assess configuration risks or configuration related risks, and also remediation of them, right? So we're looking for misconfigurations that can lead to a potential risk. And last but not least, of course, is compliance, being able to provide you with that out of the box templates that can map or tap into compliance standards to technical controls for example, GDPR, SOC 2, ISO 27001, and so on. And the plus here, of course, as we said, is having that CDR, or cloud detection and response, which, by the way, when it comes to GRC, applies to all three areas or categories. Now, let's understand a little bit deeper into how is it that CSPM Plus complements cloud security from a holistic standpoint. And this is also known holistically as CNAP. CNAP, it's a term described by market analysts, for example, like Gartner, and it stands for Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. That means a solution or a set of solutions which combine can provide you protection from end to end. That means from pre-deployment, which is the case of IAC security, or infrastructure as code security, being able to get your templates, which is the very first thing that any customer or cloud customer would do to deploy a cloud infrastructure, understanding that declarative piece of code, what misconfigurations are there, then going to CSPM Plus, which we'll be looking at misconfigurations, and that's more of a real time, not pre-deployment as IAC, looking in real time how well or how bad your environment is configured, uncovering those potential risks or misconfigurations to you from the perspective of the assets that you have in the cloud, how they are configured, identities, and also policies or entitlements that are assigned to these resources. And last but not least is also the cloud detection and response piece. So that is what CSPM is looking at. And up to here, we are not yet inside the workloads, because IAC is looking at the templates. CSPM Plus is looking from the outside, anywhere from the management plane, which is the top, your console, down to the resources and how they interact with each other. But we're not yet looking inside of the workloads. To be able to provide you with that holistic protection, we definitely need to look inside the cloud workloads as well. I'm talking, for example, about cloud instances or EC2 instances in the case of AWS, which or in which we can install an agent, introspect processes, understand network connections, and understand from within that workload how is it that everything is flowing. That can be through multiple preventative controls that we have. In fact, we have some purpose-built security solutions, like for example, security for AWS, that can provide you with full visibility, full prevention, protection, detection, and response within this workload. And last but not least is XDR, not from the perspective of the CDR, because CSPM Plus will include that component of cloud detection and response through our XDR cloud sensor, but XDR to complement and expand the horizons when it comes to, for example, identities, whether it's on Azure AD or on-prem ID, understand, for example, productivity suite like Office 365, G Suite, and even at the network level, if you have a hybrid cloud infrastructure or a data center connected to the public cloud. Now, let's look at licensing because it's really important that you as partners understand how is it that we're licensing the solution and what is it that we're going to charge you or your customers will be charged for. So licensing have two flavors. Basically, the product itself has two flavors. It can be sold as a standalone. That means that you can use the product with only the CSPM Plus license, and that'll be good enough to protect from the outside your management plane, your subscriptions, everything that you have running in your cloud infrastructure without any agent being installed and without any need or the need for any other license from Bitdefender. The other flavor of it would be if you install it as an add-on. That means that you can have multiple licenses, for example, enterprise license, for example, NDR license, and on top of it, you can add CSPM Plus product license. So it will work either way. When it comes to how we build, or what is it exactly that we build, we have different options, but basically what we're looking at is billable resources. Now, you might wonder, what is a billable resource? A billable resource is nothing but a large unit of compute, or perhaps, as you can see some examples here, virtual machines, databases or instances, database servers, load balancer. You have some examples actually in the right-hand side of the presentation, which you can see per CSP, what is it that we're considering. Now, just because we say that we are using this as a reference to be able to build you and your customers, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that we're monitoring, right? And I'm going to show you here in my console. For example, if we look at the GravityZone CSPM Plus console, which comes from the GravityZone console, which is the master one, if we go here to the settings section, resources utilization, you can see that my resource count is 72. However, if I go to the resources section within the posture management main or master section, you can see that I'm monitoring 596 resources. Why is that? Well, that's simply because we take as a reference, for example, the EC2 instance, which is a large unit of compute. However, if you look at here in the breakdown, we're looking at EC2 subnets. We're looking at EC2 security groups, or better said, instance level firewall. We're looking at VPCs, internet gateway. We're looking at, for example, elastic IP addresses that are assigned to those instances. So our solution can monitor everything that is connected to make that instance work, all the moving pieces of that particular instance, okay? Now, now that we understand perhaps how licensing works, let's share with you some use cases. And I'm going to start from the beginning. So we talk about visibility being one of the main issues in the cloud um, because of misconfigurations and so on. But it comes all down. It comes all down to visibility. That means that you cannot protect what you can see, right? If you have no visibility, if you don't understand, even if you have the CSPM solution that CSP is providing you, across the board, you won't be, probably you would have many blind spots. Probably you won't be able to see uh, every single resource that you have properly categorized into different meaningful categories and so on. So this is really important when it comes to that automated piece that allows you observability across all your cloud footprint or your cloud infrastructure. And when you go to the console, that visibility, or for you to get that visibility, of course, you need to run some steps. For example, you need to perform um, integration, so that way we can see who's your CSP. We need to run a scan. And as soon as you run that scan, you should be able to see in the overview section findings. Findings alongside with the briefing of your security posture. That means how many critical findings I have, high priority, medium severity, and low severity. At the same time, you can look at compliance and you can understand how compliant my infrastructure or infrastructures, because I can have multiple CSPs and multiple subscriptions, how well aligned is that with our compliance recommendations. And then from here, of course, you can, for example, see from the beginning of the time. In my case, it's not really highlighted in the beginning because I just have this environment live. But if I come here and put the filter to show me from the beginning of the time, of course, I can have representation of how many findings were uncovered, how many of them were resolved, and how many of them were modified. That means that you accepted perhaps the risk. Okay. Now, it is really important to understand before we continue, who is it that we cover? And this is probably a refresh for you, but it's valid to mention. So we cover at the moment Azure, AWS, GCP, and Huawei. Huawei is not exposed when it comes to the scan group configuration, but if you need to have coverage for Huawei, you can let us know via support, via your account manager, your partner manager, and we can make that available for your console or your customer console. In terms of functionalities covered, you can see there basically automated inventory monitoring, misconfiguration and compliance, IAM for cloud, and threat detection and response is covered for most of them. And I say most because we're working on CDR for Huawei and Alibaba. For now, is not yet available. Now, you can see this over here. For example, you can see how many CSPs I have. You can also see it in the rules section, which is honestly where we should get started. From there, you can see if you list on, if you list, for example, on accounts, you can see the different accounts. You can see the icons for Azure, for AWS, and for GCP. And then you can filter one by one. This is really important. When it comes to visibility, the very first question that any of your customers or you might ask is, or might wonder is, where do I start, right? So where is it that I should start? And the easiest way to do it is from this rules section or security brief section, where you can say, show me, for example, this AWS account. And then from there, I would like to see uh, resources of any type. In my case, I'm gonna leave them selected as all, and then select the severity. So I want to see what's critical and what is of high priority. Why? Because that's what I should tackle first. That's what I should look into first. And last but not least, looking at the ones that fail compliance, because as you might know, if you fail compliance, you can end up paying a fine that can be as big as the cost of a data breach, right? So it's really important that you take this to in mind, take this into account. And this is a tactical filtering of what I should take care of. I'm gonna pick this issue. So you can see here, for example, SNS topic server-side encryption is not enabled. I can look at the specific resources where this issue was found, and then I can look at the whole description of the issue. Notice that we're not only telling you what the issue is about, which is as simple as this, we're also giving you an explanation of the issue itself and as well as its implications, right? So if this materializes, what can happen to you? And then from there, we are posing you with compliance, different compliance and regulatory frameworks, as well as standards. For example, you can see a best practice template here, AWS WAF, and it's telling you in which section we're highlighting or we're talking specifically about that issue and which subsection as well. And if that's not enough, we're giving you remediation capabilities. Remediation capabilities that allow you, as you know, not only to be able to understand how to solve the issue or what the issue is manually, but also you can copy, for example, this CLI command, pass it over to your DevOps team or your customer's DevOps team. And of course, they should have AWS CLI. It's as easy as copy this and run it into their environment, and it will fix the issue. If that's not enough, you can also provide them with this playbook code if that's the way that they prefer to work, and they can also add it to the playbooks. And also we can use Terraform. As you know, Terraform is probably the de facto standard for today's um, cloud deployment using infrastructure as code. So you can provide this snip or this code example to them to be added in their code, okay? And from here, of course, I also have one-click remediation. So if I'm in the very rare case that you're allowed to fix things live in a customer cloud infrastructure, you can click on this one-click remediate, and we will run the remediation for it. Pretty similar to what you see here in the CLI command. Now, for this remediation capability to work, you need to bear in mind that besides the integration steps that we have here for the scan groups, which is done pretty much through a CloudFormation template in a pretty straightforward fashion, we need also another CloudFormation template allowing Bitdefender CSPM Plus console to have write access to your infrastructure. That means to be able to perform changes within your cloud subscription. And this is the template that I'm showing you here, okay? Now, deploying those templates will be a matter of a few minutes, I would say, not even 5 minutes. Now, if I go back to what I was before, and I select that same account with AWS, and I select, for example, the severity to critical and high, and do the same filter that I use for fail compliance. If I go back to the same issue, notice that we categorize them with this thunder icon. That means one-click remediation is available. And then I can come here and look at the specific issue as well. Now, if I'm not ready to fix this issue or to work with this issue, I can simply put here a note when I change its category or status to risk accepted. As soon as I do that, you will be presented with different ways in which or timeframes in which you want to suppress this finding for. You can do 3 months, 6 months, or you can do a custom duration and put the end date here. And then you can type here information. That is exactly what we're referring with at the beginning with suppress risk. So if I go here again to custom and I go all the way to, for example, 3 months or 2 months, and you see here modify findings. If I look at this one, for example, you can see that this one has some history. That history means modification that me and my team have performed to be able to run this type of demos. So you can see exactly the audit trail of who has worked with the issue and how and when, right? So that gives you a good briefing of the history of that particular finding. Now, going back to the issue, I wanted to show you something pretty interesting here, and that is if, for example, you have integration with Jira, if I have an integration with Jira, and that integration is set to a specific project, whenever I set there my project, it would automatically allow you from the issue or finding itself to be able to send that finding to Jira in a form of a ticket. So that means that I can come here, say export the issue, and if there's an integration, I can then send it to that project. That's the best way to let your DevOps team of the issue, and then they will be able to work with it and notify you when the issue is addressed, solved, or if you need to accept the risk for the meantime because they don't have any capability or capacity to be able to fix it in a timely fashion. Okay. Now, if we continue with the presentation, I want to show you also how many billable resources we cover per CSP. For example, if you look at here, you can see AWS is where we have most of the coverage. This is not billable resources, this is all resources, just a small correction. So resources that we can monitor, not resources that we bill you based on. Same is true here. You can see GCP, for example. You can see in Azure, everything that we cover. Now, I already showed you how we resolve misconfigurations through that one-click remediation, through that CloudFormation template. What I wanted to mention here is that at the moment, our solution has this capability available only for AWS. Coming soon, we expect to have it for Azure and GCP as well. Just stay tuned, and we will let you know when we have it available. Now, compliance. That is a big reason why to acquire or why to procure a solution like CSPM Plus. Why? Because the very first question that any organization that understands risks, that understands compliance, will ask any CSP or any cloud broker or any partner, in your case, would be how compliant is that cloud infrastructure, or how can I assess compliance? Because I need to stick to GDPR, I need to stick to um, um, ISO 27001, I need to stick to SOC 2, Type 2. So for that, we have a very comprehensive set of capabilities, and I will show you here. So for example, if I come here to compliance section, besides the compliance subsection that I show you in the findings, here you can run assessments. Assessments that will be specific to the framework that you're looking for. And this is useful for, let's say, if you have a compliance team that you given them access to the console, then they will be able to run the assessments from here. For example, if I want to look for GDPR, I can look at GDPR. I can select the specific account that I was showing you before. And now you can see that that account is 62% compliant. So instantly, it can tell you if what passed, what failed. Now, if you want to have more information about that, you can drill through the different sections. The easiest way, and I would say the most practical way, would be the reports. Why? Because I'm pretty sure that your security analyst or your compliance analyst, they won't have access to the console in every single scenario or in every single customer organization. So in that case, for example, if I were to select GDPR again, and I go here to that AWS account that I was talking about, I can simply generate a PDF. It will be generated pretty fast in a matter of seconds. And then I can open that PDF and I can tell you what is it exactly that failed. It's pretty similar to what I showed you before, but now with all the breakdown, easy to read, easy to understand, and of course, shareable because you can send this via email, via Slack, via Teams to any person within your team or in your customer's organization. Okay. Notice that we have, the option to select one framework at a time, but you can select multiple accounts if you want to run that for the entire set of accounts or scan groups that you selected, or if you do it one by one. It is best practice though to do it one by one because it makes more sense when it comes to the time to analyze that individually, right? See, for example, that compliance report that I show you that is for GDPR, but it's for GDPR over that particular AWS subscription that I have, not for everything um, that I have within my Cloud Console or within my scan groups. Okay, so that's compliance. Now, something that I wanted to mention real quick, and this is one of the issues that I see or we see that are becoming prevalent in the cloud is crypto mining. Now, crypto mining takes place simply because you perhaps have some resources that were compromised, perhaps orphan resources, resources that they don't have any tag, and perhaps you use them for the POC with a company, for the testing environment. They were left there. Somehow somebody managed to get access to those resources, and now you're compromised. So I guess a good way to look at this would be from the resources section. Our managed detection and response team for Asia Pacific before the acquisition of Horangi, which is the CSPM Plus that you see now as part of GravityZone, they were doing this and they were using this basically for baselining purposes. For example, I know that I have multiple CSPs, multiple subscriptions. I already have my scan groups. I run the first scan and it comes down to 596 resources. If in a week I see 590 or perhaps 600, that is pretty normal. So within a month, maybe I should be able to establish a baseline and say, this is my norm. But if I come back next month and look at this number and now this number says 1,000, that's a disparate number. That might be indicative that your infrastructure might be attacked. You might have some virtual machines or instances that are not necessarily matching this number, this initial number that you have. And that might be because you were compromised and you're victim of crypto mining. So that's really important that you take that into account for um, you know crypto mining and as a use case for crypto mining, how you can leverage this resources count to set a baseline. Okay. Now, if we continue with the presentation, I would like to just talk a little bit about IAM for cloud, because up to here, I show you how we can assess the different scan groups, the different CSPs that you enroll, how you can remediate issues, how you can make sure that that environment is compliant or not. But what about who is accessing these resources in the cloud or assets and how, right? So how do you understand which identities you have and what is the relationship between identities, policies, and resources? So for that, I will show you here in my console the asset inventory section. It differentiates or it differs from the resources section simply because this section is more prone or more targeted, oriented to show that relationship between resources and identities, counting some identities or some groups as resources, okay? So the best way to look at this is from the identities tab. And from there, perhaps I can look at, for example, these IAM users that I have in AWS. Notice that we provide you with a breakdown between IAM users, meaning identities used on a day-to-day, identities that might have access to the console, to IAM roles that you might create for integration purposes, for third-party integrations and so on, to IAM groups and IAM service accounts. You'll be surprised how many times I notice what I've heard from customers, from partners, from technology partners, them being surprised by the amount of accounts that they found, even from employees that they are no longer with the company, but they still have an account there. So this is very eye-opening for when you're running a POC, because it would allow you to uncover identities the same way that I talk about resources or untagged resources. You can see many identities there that they are not even needed anymore. And from that perspective, we can give you the rundown into the identity name, the scope of it, meaning the account that it belongs to, if it has sensitive access or not, for example, root user, superadmin, um, how many resources it has access to, the permission level across those resources, and of course, any risks that can be associated with those identities. For example, if I look at this one, this vulnerable user, you can see here we have 4 findings. First of all, this IAM user identity has access to the console, and the password is enabled without MFA. So there's no MFA enabled or multi-factor authentication, which is a high severity risks for any console, any management plan, because your password can be easily guessed, and perhaps your account can be, as the result, compromised. We're listing other issues here. For example, this user has never been used. So that means that you created it, but you forgot about it, right? Why to have such a user? Why to have such an identity if you're not using it, right? And here we're telling you for how long has been unused. And then last but not least, we're telling you that IAM policies are not attached to um, IAM users, right? Because this might be the case of this particular one. Now you can look at the resources count, you can look at the permission level. For example, you can look at policies or entitlements, and you can look at metadata related to this particular user. So this is basically everything that I have access to. Now from there, to make matters easier for you, if you're a visual person, you don't want to read too much, you can also have a graphical representation of these accesses. And now I can see that user, I can see all the policies or entitlements that he or she has access to or has attached. And then I can see the different resources that it has access to. Okay, so we're providing you with a comprehensive, very comprehensive representation of how that user is allowed to access cloud resources within your subscriptions. Okay. Now, from IAM, like I said, you can also look at this in different ways. You can look at it from the perspective of relationship from resources to identities. And here, for example, if I were to select EC2 instances, you can see that I have 14. I can select any of my instances, and I would have a similar graphical representation. So now you can see from the instance itself to the different policies to the different identities that can access this resource. And whether it's through the console or programmatically, as you can see here, through the rest of the identities that I have. Okay, that's really, really important because again, as I mentioned at the beginning, coming from market analysts, they found that data breaches that happen, they involve somehow data stored in the cloud. And the very first thing that we overlook in the cloud is identities. That means that user or that account that was created to either access through the console or programmatically to your environment, and now is opening the doors for perpetrators and attackers in the wild. Okay. Now, besides this, of course, we also have the capability to uncover threats in the cloud. And this is what we call CDR, or Cloud Detection and Response. What that means is, in the event that all of the controls that I mentioned before fail to detect the threat or to detect the misconfiguration or risk, or you perhaps accepted that risk, and in that meantime an attack materializes, that you can have full visibility, and not only visibility, but also you can detect the attack and respond to it, have or responsive capabilities available within the console to it. And I will show you what that means by bringing back the console. So if we go to the GravityZone console, you can see that within the GravityZone console, we have a section that is called configuration. Then we have sensors management. And then from there, we have the different sensors that we have available. So basically, what we're referring to is the cloud sensor. Azure Cloud, we're referring to AWS, and we're referring to GCP, right? So those sensors that can be integrated with your cloud service provider, your subscriptions, particularly with those within those CSPs, to understand from the events, from the logs that are generated, anytime that a change is performed, anytime that an account accesses the console, access an application, access a resource, how is it that it happens? And that's exactly what we're reading to understand anomalies, to understand potential attacks or data breaches. And I would show you a representation of that. In this case would be Azure, but if I go to the incidents section, you can see this attack here. If you look at the attack, you can see that we're providing you with some visibility as to, what is the impact, meaning which entities were compromised at the Azure virtual server level, AD user level, IPs, and even storage accounts. And also you can look at the resources, for example, how many roles got involved, how many applications were exploited, Azure key vaults that got involved, as well as automation accounts and automation hooks, etc. Now, if you want to have that graphical representation that I show you on the IAM side, you can see it from here. And now we're looking at an attack that happened in the beginning to be able to access um, the customer infrastructure, but then to be able to exfiltrate data from the customer storage accounts, from the key vaults that the customer has, and then last but not least, to understand or to encrypt the customer environment or the Azure storages using ransomware. This is a very unique type of attack, but it's nothing but real life, right? Because typically we see, sophisticated attacks being launched with probably the main goal, which is exfiltrate data from the company. But now we're seeing an attack that is looking forward to exfiltrate data, but also looking forward to encrypt data and collect the ransom for the rescue of that data. So it's a very intentional attack with definitely a very in-depth set of motivations or goals. Okay, and all of this is possible because of the CDR piece of CSPM Plus, which is included when you procure the product. Now, notice that in any other incident or as any other incident, when you configure the cloud sensor alongside with CSPM, you will get the representation in the timeline, but you can also look at the representation in a kill chain. That for you to understand how the initial access was performed, basically by breaching or hijacking a high privilege role assigned to a new user. Then, you know, you can see IAM misconfigurations or configurations being modified. Then you can see what happened at persistence, basically by creating an automation account. And the list goes on and on for defense evasion mechanism that they use to credential access by performing key vault enumeration and impacting, of course, multiple resources, which is what they use actually to exfiltrate data and then perform the ransomware attack or the ransomware encryption. Okay, so that's basically all the capabilities in a nutshell from the GravityZone CSPM Plus. So for you to be able to bridge the gaps, as I explained at the beginning, between your CSP, that shared responsibility model that you have in place, and you or your customers' cloud infrastructure, right? From any perspective, from the perspective of pre-deployment all the way up to deployment, whether it's from prevention, protection, detection, and response. Here is a summary of the main, the value of our solution. For example, as you saw, we have in-depth rules, and probably you didn't see this in depth, but I would like to show it to you real quick here, so you can have it. You can have a glance or take a look at it. When we're talking about rules and very comprehensive rules, is nothing but this rule configuration, where you can see multiple rules that we have in place, particularly for AWS. If you want to look at Azure, you can look at a scan group or an account subscription that is configured, and you can go through these rules. Of course, you can change the severity of them. If for you this is not high but it's critical, you can change it, or you can, in the very unlikely case you don't want to look at alerts or misconfigurations, findings in general about that particular issue, you can turn it off as well. Okay, so that's pretty comprehensive. We have more than 500 rules. I would say that we're on the top of the game when it comes to competencies in this regard. Also, we have reports that can be set up pretty easily. Look at the 30 minutes there and understand that that means from the moment that you put the key into GravityZone, access to your console, enroll the first cloud service provider integration, and then perform the scan. From that moment, then you can run the report. And yeah, it would take 30 minutes, the overall process. But running a report, as I show you, it takes seconds for you to have it, okay? Also, we have integrated access to the sensors through which we can visualize threats, we can visualize an attack in motion, as I show you, and we can tell you exactly what happened. This solution, and this is something that we get kudos for, anywhere from technology alliance partners to customers to even cloud service providers that they have their own solutions. There's a Bitdefender, you're genius for creating a solution that is designed for experts and non-cloud experts. So you need to be an expert, and this is the same concept that we have within GravityZone product line. So we keep it simple, but that doesn't mean that it's simpler than anybody else. We have all the capabilities, all the competencies, all the different features that you need, but it can be used by experts or non-experts. Of course, we have advanced remediation actions. I show you that. Not only as part of the CSPM solution when it comes to resolving or remediating misconfigurations, but also throughout the sensors, because we have also response actions as well. And we have support for multiple CSPs. You saw it in the presentation, Azure, AWS, GCP, Huawei Cloud at the moment, and we're working in Alibaba as well. Okay. Now, with that said, I would like to open up the floor for questions. And I would like my colleague here, Arjun, to give me a hand with any questions that might be in the questions section. Arjun, do we have any?
Thanks, Yashir. It's a great presentation and session. A lot of things I learned a lot. Um, the question I have for you is, when we enable scan for those cloud provider, will there be impact on resources?
That's a good question. Yeah, given that we don't need any agent, neither any resource to be deployed in your infrastructure to perform the integration, the answer is no. So we don't need any virtual machine, any server, any database for us to be able to retrieve the metadata that is needed to analyze your infrastructure misconfigurations.
Yep,
Okay.
thanks. And in terms of identity and access management capability that you shown, is there any remediation step, like is there simple example is that are we able to reset users password accounts from CSPM console itself, or is there an
Yeah,
integration to
that's
perform those
that's
kind
a
of
good
tasks?
that's a good question. At the moment, we have the option to enable, for example, certain things like MFA, like server-side encryption, but we don't have a way to, let's say, respond to that compromised user because CSPM within the console itself, we're not necessarily looking at threats. Now, with the XDR sensor, yes. With the XDR sensor, you can force the password reset to a user, you have certain actions that can be performed. You can, for example, suspend that account. So, but that is all within the capabilities of XDR or CDR, which is the cloud sensor for CSPM.
Yep. Thanks, Yasir. Now we'll wait for a couple of minutes to see if we have any more question from audience.
Yep. In the meantime, I would show here in the overview. So when you look at, for example, action needed, you look at view details, you can see here the remediation capabilities that we were talking about, right? So for example, force user to reset credentials. So if I execute this, we will automatically force that user, that admin, to reset his credentials because this account was compromised. So as an example of CDR.
Yep,
Okay.
that makes sense. Thanks.
I know it's a lot of content, so probably questions at this moment might not arise, but I
Yep.
want you to rest assured that Arjun and I were here to help you. So if any question comes to mind, feel free to send us an email. Feel free to schedule a session with us. We'll be more than happy to help you out.
Thanks, Yasir. And yep, this session is recorded. I will share you recorded session with all attendees and also presentation. So once again, thanks guys. Thank you. Thanks team. Thanks Yasir.
Thank you all. See you in the next one.
See ya. Bye.